be doing a recap on the Morphy case, dealing with day 3 of the preliminary hearing. And I'm going to be using as my sort of source material Lauren Scharf's tweets. So I'm going to basically be reviewing some of them, but also interpret some of the possible interpretation, the significance possibly of what is being brought to light. Quite astonishing revelations, just as there were on the first and second day. So let me just first greet some of you guys. Bria, thanks a lot for making it on such short notice. Bearded Dragon, see you. I think when we're at 200, then I'm going to get going. So hopefully in about a minute or two from now. Someone said, thought we are late. Sorry that I was about 5 minutes late getting on. Someone says, are you better? Well, I haven't really eaten, so this is probably not going to be terribly long. Can you guys see me okay? I see it's buffering on my side. The chat seems to be coming through okay. Anna says, hit the like button quick. To see we're on 129. Okay, good that I'm coming through quite clearly. Grandma is here. By the way, I'm going to be doing another live after this in about 2 hours, 15 minutes. So I'm going to try and keep this short. Stephanie's probably going to be with me on the next live with what Don Wells said last night on the Voices Behind the Wall channel. So we took notes about that, and we're just going to discuss a couple of things that were mentioned there. Some pretty surprising statements that Don made. Okay. Lisa Soper says, am I subscribed? Well, if you're chatting, are you subscribed? A Stitch in Crime, hi from Maine. Is Timmy a daddy now? That's a great question. I don't think so. I don't really know. I haven't heard any confirmation of. It's been about a month, and I think they would know by now, but I suppose it's possible. Debbie says, I can see you just fine. That's good to hear. Okay, I see we're on 164, almost there. Colfoot plus Yarpie in Wales. Okay, that's good to see. Sharon, good to see you here as well. Has Timmy got a girlfriend? Timmy does have, I don't know if you can call her a girlfriend given how quickly things happened and then moved on. Timmy's got a girlfriend in another town, let's put it that way. My dog is here, sleeping in my arm. You know, it's time to get there. Amelia Gemini, hi from southeastern, is it Pennsylvania? Bev Spencer was watching from the northeast, I guess, of Great Britain. Okay, we're almost there. Desiree Collins from Johannesburg. Good to hear from you, Desiree. Lisa Soper, Esmeralda, watching from Brazil. Michelle from Indiana, good to have you here. 12 to go, then we're going to get started. Grandma is from San Antonio, Texas. Rebecca Hudson, thanks for that, Rebecca. Leah Power, Texas here. Nancy from Baltimore, Maryland. Ashley Bryan from Ohio. Jody from Indiana. Is anyone here from Colorado? West Virginia watching, that's Lisa from West Virginia. Marian from Cape Town, love your insight. Thanks, Marian. Or is it Marianne? Okay, so we're on 200. I want to get going. So one of the key things that I thought sort of stood out in today's hearing was this period of time that Barry actually had about 6 hours theoretically to dispose of Suzanne's body. That's quite a lot of time. And I think what's quite important to bear in mind with that is compare that to the Summer Wells case, where there was possibly as much as 4 hours time. Something like that requires quite a lot of time. You need to travel somewhere. If you take the Chris Watts case, how long did that disposal take? You could argue that it was 4 hours. It was an hour to get to the site. It was also, I guess, an hour to get back, but also what were the arrangements prior to that? Cleaning things up and all that kind of thing. So in terms of the day 3, the day starts off with Barry's defense seeking to address the damaging shooting chipmunks testimony. I think that is what the defense brought up. So it's obviously been uppermost in their mind. How do they explain these sort of erratic movements at this critical time? And so they sort of clarify, well, he didn't shoot 85 chipmunks all at once. And I must say, I don't know if that's a terribly strong start to the defense's day, bringing that up in that way. He apparently told law enforcement, when I'm home, I walk around and shoot chipmunks. It's kind of laughable within the context of what we're dealing with, Suzanne's disappearance. It's not funny, but it's certainly on its own terms, it's curious, a curious aspect, kind of a ridiculous aspect, that he was running around after chipmunks rather than that something else happened. What are you going to believe? And funny enough, in the Laurie Vallow case, you've also got an animal entering the narrative, where Chad said that he shot a raccoon, also at a really critical time. Something else that comes up through this preliminary hearing, we'll get to there in a moment, is I think it's a .22 unused casing that was actually found in the bedroom. And in the Oscar Pistorius case, I think there's also a casing close to the bedroom. It was sort of in that passageway. But what that sort of begs the question is, was the other weapon used? Also, could Suzanne have been threatened with another weapon? And also, is that casing that was in the bedroom random or relevant? So going to Lauren Scharf's tweets, she, right in the beginning, referred to Nielsen, that's the defense attorney, just showing how it works, how these tranquilizer darts work, showing that you've got to inject into the dart these chemicals. She's trying to sort of sketch the complexity, that it's not like a bullet that you just load it. It's a bit more complicated than that. It's got to be, let's say, filled up with chemicals. So you wouldn't just buy the darts, you would also have to buy the chemicals. And so that can be a little bit problematic if you see, it's not quite the same if you find a casing, like a dart cap. You would also have to say, well, where are the chemicals that this went into? So it's almost like, where you have a weapon like a gun, you would have bullets. Well, with a tranquilizer gun, you would have the bullet that's also got to be kind of armed, if that makes sense. So it just adds another layer to that. Then I think Agent Johnny Grusing was on the stand, and the defense attorney was asking him about the shooting chipmunks. I did think it was very interesting that the defense started with this. It just shows that since the last time they were in court, this was one of the things that they felt was the most important to address. And so they prioritized it by talking about it first. First of all, it's the shooting of the chipmunks. Secondly, it's the tranquilizer dart. And those are factors that are going to turn out to be absolutely critical to this case, either in terms of inculpatory or exculpatory. And there's already a little bit of doubt in the aspect that the cap wasn't found immediately, right? The dart cap found in the dryer wasn't found immediately. So this, I must say, has got echoes of the Amanda Knox case. I don't know if you guys know that case very well, but you had the bra clasp that was only found, I think, in December. So the crime happened early November. And I think it was something like 6 weeks, but quite a long period later, they found a critical piece of evidence that had DNA on it. But as a result, the legal folks were able to argue contamination. Now, it feels like you have the same situation here, a critical piece of evidence. And now you could argue all sorts of things. You could argue, well, between the incident and a couple of days later, could someone have planted that dart cap there? Could it have come in there in some other way? And so that can potentially weaken the prosecution's case. So I certainly feel like I really wish I was in court, because there's a lot that if you're a reporter, you would hear and see. There are photos being shown, body cam footage being shown, Barry Morphy walking through his own home after the incident, shown on body cam. You can hear what he's saying and all that kind of thing. We don't get to witness that because, it's not being broadcast. So I do think if you're sitting there, you're going to get a very vivid sense of the crime and the crime scene and the fabric, compared to us having to sort of look at tweets. Although I must say Lauren's done a very good job giving us a blow-by-blow of all the sort of aspects. But some of the things that you want to know, the details, the color and the texture, some of the little nuances that you don't get through the sort of third-person kind of thing. In any event, apparently Nielsen shows the courtroom the packaging of brand new darts, what that looks like, and that it was unopened. And then I think, I'm not sure if I understand this. I don't know whether this was actually found in the crime scene. So in other words, there was a package of darts found in the Morphy home that was unopened. I don't know if that is what's happening or if she's just showing a sample. But it does seem like it was something found in the home. And I think what that's, again, trying to do is create this idea of reasonable doubt. There were darts, but they were in an unopened package kind of thing. What Agent Grusing confirms is that they were the same type of tranquilizer darts, but didn't have a cap on it. I suppose you could also make the case that there were tranquilizer darts lying all over the place, and so that is that necessarily significant? It's also pointed out that the dart doesn't come with fluid or chemicals in them. That's got to be bought separately. And so is there any proof that this was done? Is there any proof that Barry bought those chemicals, kind of recently or something like that? And so Nielsen actually shows, I think, in court how you've got to inject the dart with these chemicals. So it's just adding a little bit of a layer of complexity to it and making it a little bit more confusing and a little bit less direct, that wow, it's so complicated what's going on here, this doesn't necessarily mean that. Right? So trying to perhaps raise uncertainty and sort of reasonable doubt. Stephanie, good to have you here as well. So when Barry was asked about the tranquilizer darts, so it says law enforcement found empty tranquilizer darts, according to Lauren Scharf, but no chemicals or vials of the chemicals at the home, right? So they find the tranquilizer darts, but they don't find any of the chemicals that are inside. And so that's kind of used to sort of not criticize, but sort of undermine the argument that could this be could this have been used on Suzanne, right? We've got a tranquilizer dart, but, well, you would need chemicals as well. And so when Barry was asked about this, he responded, I don't recall having any left, meaning I don't remember whether I've got any of these chemicals left, right? I've highlighted those words, I don't recall, just as it's a kind of thing people say when, not saying they're necessarily lying, but it tends to not be a natural way that someone would necessarily answer something. I don't recall is sort of lawyer speak. It tends to be when you're in a legalistic state of mind. So when Barry was asked about this pretty critical question, he answers, I don't recall. Most of us, if we asked certain things that aren't significant, would say, well, I'm not sure, I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that. We would seldom say, I don't recall. If you were in a setting, someone was saying, I don't recall over and over again, you might say that. But it's certainly kind of a little bit of an unnatural way of speaking. And so that's also highlighted. Then, according to another tweet by Lauren Scharf, she says, quote, the language of the tranquilizer dart cap wasn't accurate. So you can see they are starting to nitpick on this particular area. They're trying to find little areas that they can pull apart. And so part of that is just, I think the defense wasn't happy with how things were mentioned. Now, I'm not sure whether they're saying calling it a tranquilizer dart cap isn't accurate. Well, what else is it? Is it a casing or a cover, or does it have some other kind of jargon? And so Nielsen, Barry's defense counsel, goes to a tranquilizer manual and refers to how to fill the dart. I actually thought when this came up, they were going to say the actual term is that, but apparently not. And so anyway, what this is trying to show is that the defense are really experts on the evidence, and actually it's like this and it's like that, but just trying to complicate, I think, the whole situation. Is the tranquilizer dart cap a relevant piece of evidence? And the prosecution would say, yes, it is. And the defense are saying, not necessarily, it's a bit more complicated than that. That's really what that's all about. As I say, all of this reminds me of the bra class in the Amanda Knox case. And if you think about that, the length of time, this is quite critical, the length of time that passed between the critical piece of evidence being deposited and found. Well, I think it was argued successfully in the Amanda Knox case, either that the evidence was inadmissible or that it was uncertain. And so it then, something that is a crucial piece of evidence then becomes kind of, I won't say inadmissible, but it becomes something that can't really be used, can't be factored into the case, and that can change the outcome. Hi, Carol from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us. So, according to the testimony today, the plastic cap wasn't found until May 19. So 9 days passed before they actually found this plastic cap. A week and 2 days passed before this happened. And so I don't mean this in a nasty way. I mean this just to say, in a scenario where law enforcement are called, pay attention. Like very, very small details can be the difference between one verdict and another. Court cases can turn on tiny little pieces of evidence, so pay attention. And one thing I appreciated in the Chris Watts case was on the day that some of the officers arrived, that they were on their knees, shining a torch into the fibers of the carpet. I believe that was on August 13th. I could be wrong, but it's just so important to really try and just pay attention to those details on those in the early phase. In the very, very early phase of it, you really want to be like a sponge, absorbing everything. Obviously, the body cam does that to some extent, but paying attention to things. And one of the most important things in a crime that may have occurred inside the home is go and look in the laundry room, go and look inside the washing machine. Same thing applies in the Chris Watts case, same thing applies in the Amanda Knox case. It also makes you wonder, for example, in the Summer Wells case, did they check the laundry? Because there's talk about dirt and clothing and all that kind of thing. And, where a person goes is also goes with them, clothing. Sometimes clothing doesn't go with them. Clothing needs to be removed. Clothing needs to be washed. So it's quite important. So according to Nielsen, they said empty vessels of the tranquilizer darts were found in the garage, but then she adds the tranquilizer gun didn't work, right? So what that's sort of conveying is more doubt. Well, so the tranquilizer gun was broken, so it couldn't have been used. And I think something like that's also said about the hot tub. The hot tub needed maintenance or was due to be fixed or something. So because of that, don't think about the hot tub, don't think about the tranquilizer gun. But I think there's another alternative. I think you could also have that there was another tranquilizer gun. There was one that was broken and then there was another one. A lot of hunters have got multiple weapons. So is that a fact? And would anyone who knew Barry know that? Would they know that there was more than one? I think the other thing that would need to be established is if the tranquilizer gun didn't work, why not? Was it something significant, or was it a small thing like, well, it wasn't set to on, or at what point didn't it work? Just like be specific about how that's the case. It could be something that it was so rusted that it was so old and rusted that it was absolutely unusable. But then why are there darts flying around all over the place, right? Or it might be a small thing that is fairly easy to use. If you compare it to a bicycle, you say, well, the bicycle didn't work. Well, why? Well, the one gear rattled a bit. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means there was a little bit of a problem with it. If you say the bicycle didn't work because it had a flat tire, well, that's a more serious problem, but you can fix a flat tire. Or you can give your bicycle a flat tire after the fact and say, oh, well, the bicycle didn't work. You've got to find out what that statement actually means. But what is going on here is muddying the issue, I think. So instead of just, okay, dart cap laundry suspicious, let's ask all of these other questions. Let's make it a lot more complicated. And so you're probably going to see a lot of that. So as I say, the plastic dart cap wasn't found until May 19th. And the investigators, I guess, acknowledge that they don't know how the cap got into the dryer or how long it had been there. That's a bit of a problem. They were probably asked, officer, do you know how that do you know how that cap got into the dryer? No, I don't. I can't say exactly how or why it got in there. Do you know how long it's been there? No, I don't know. It could have been a shortish time or a longish time, right? I'm going to provide a little scenario how I think the cap got in there, which I think is quite logical. But of course, it's speculation. It's just an idea. But I think it's fairly reasonable to assume. So I'm going to come back to this in a moment, how I think it got there. But that's part of the laundry narrative. We're going to deal with that in a moment. The interesting thing as well is that Barry Morphy's DNA was excluded from the plastic cap, right? Now, I think that's quite interesting. That is how seriously the defense are taking this, that they, well, obviously they tested the cap for DNA, but they also want to really say, guys, you know what, Barry's DNA wasn't on the cap, so I don't think, Barry didn't touch the cap and put it in the dryer. It's not clear that that's what happened. That all of these things are trying to slowly knock down kind of what is going on. Let me just deal with this. Thank you so much, Dragon Breath. Raymond, thank you as well. Thanks very much, Dragon Breath. Dragon Breath writes, I find this more damning. No way the tranquilizer gun could have been used on a deer if broken. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. So on the one hand, you have this argument that it was broken, but then at the same time, I think Barry said something like he shot a deer with it. So which argument are you trying to make? All I'm saying is the defense are trying to find ways to create uncertainty. And you may not have a jury thinking that clearly, thinking in this exactly according to the point that you've made here. The dart could certainly have been used by hand on a human that could walk right up. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure how it works, but I would certainly assume that that's possible. It's to do with an impact, and you could impact using your hand. I don't know whether with a bullet in a gun, you obviously couldn't do the same thing. You use the not quite sure what the word is for it. I think it's called the hammer. The hammer of a gun sets off the bullet. Now I don't know if there's a similar scenario like that to a tranquilizer. I don't know. It is quite an interesting question. Someone who knows, maybe you can leave a comment. Someone who's got experience in that area. Okay, so now we go on to the phone data review. The last call made from Suzanne's phone was on May 9th in the afternoon. And this is also where I feel a little bit frustrated. When in the afternoon was that call made? So I'm also not quite clear what Lauren means by incoming or outgoing calls between 12:02 and 12:17. Were there calls or weren't there? She said something like 12:02 and 12:17 in the morning. Incoming, outgoing calls on May 10th. The last registered call was on May 9th in the afternoon. So I don't know, from that I understand that there weren't any calls, but it's just a little bit unclear. So So there was a registered call from Suzanne's phone on May 9th in the afternoon. I don't know to whom. I'm not sure if that was specified. Who did she call? What did she say to this person? But then there is something pretty interesting going back in time. Suzanne sent Barry the "I'm done" text on May 6th. So just think about that. Essentially 3 days later, I don't really think May 10 counts as a full day. So essentially 3 days after the "I'm done" text, Suzanne disappears. Suzanne, I believe, died. She says, "I'm done," and that communicates something, doesn't it, to Barry, that we're in the end game now. If she's done, well then, what do you call it? A lot is going to change. She may change bank accounts. She may move to another house. He may be in financial peril sooner rather than later, right? Sharon Tuck says, please like, share, and subscribe. But you kind of get what I'm saying. That is like a trigger to him. There are a lot of other triggers. There are a lot of slow burns. That is potentially a trigger. And interestingly, in the Chris Watts case, those are words Shanann uses as well. "I'm done." Actually, she says it to Chris Watts saying, "If you're done, tell me," right? and he can't tell her because he's trying not to antagonize her, he's trying not to alarm her, he's trying to control Shanann, right? And so in this particular case, also if she says, I'm done, Barry might have gone into a, not an emergency mode, but into a kind of a state of heightened alert mode where he now wants to find out what is going on and, find out what she's thinking. And how's he going to find that? He might want to have some kind of surveillance on Suzanne. He's going to watch what she's doing. Is she having an affair? Is she doing anything? Is she transferring money? There's money in the safe. Is she talking about that? What is going on? So he's going to want to control the situation. We know he's a controlling guy. Is he going to, do those things, right? And the I'm done is sort of the starting, like the starter in a sprinting race in the Olympics. The I'm done starts off that process potentially. And so what then happens? So I'm just getting a bit lost between some of these texts, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But what is quite interesting is the I'm done text was apparently sent from the neighbor's home. So Suzanne was actually at the neighbor when she sent that text, apparently. And that neighbor's Jean Ritter. And I think she was having coffee there between 9 and 11. And theoretically, I don't know, if Jean Ritter testifies, she might say that Suzanne was in a state, Suzanne was afraid, Suzanne was crying, Suzanne and Barry, I'm speculating, I'm saying it's possible that she was at the neighbor following an argument, following something, and she was emotional about something and she's crying on the neighbor's shoulder and then sent this text at that time. It's also possible there was angry texting going on at that point. I'm just saying it's possible within this emotional period that she went to the neighbor for safety, for comfort, for whatever, and that was where she sent the text from. I'm just saying it's possible. It could also be that she'd had an appointment anyway and it's totally irrelevant. But she then said those words when she was there. It would be interesting to hear what the neighbor says, especially about that coffee date that they had between 9 and 11. Did she say anything about Barry? How did she seem? Did she seem worried? So what I think is quite intertextual again to the Wells case is the time that it takes, as I mentioned earlier, to properly dispose of a body, not just dispose. In the Chris Watts case, could you say that he properly disposed? Well, in a certain interpretation, yes, but the shallow grave that he dug, I wouldn't say that was proper. It was just adequate, kind of thing. Would that have been sufficient if a certain period of time had gone by? I'm not sure if it would have been. In any event, it does take time to properly dispose of a body, and Barry did have several hours. Weren't there several hours in the Summer Wells case? Not 40 minutes, I think several hours. According to Agent Grushing, said that Barry had 6 hours to dispose of a body, which could mean at least a 3-hour round trip. So I think what he's talking about there is what could have happened is Barry could have driven 3 hours, dumped something, and then driven back 3 hours. So it could also be drove 1 hour or drove 2 hours and then spent the balance of time in that location. So there are a couple of ways interpreting it. But the same in a way applies in the Summer Wells case. If you take the amount of time, you can start drawing a radius for how far is the furthest point likely that the body may be disposed. Certainly the first point of disposal. You can sort of work it out mathematically. And so you want to search within that maximum radius. I also thought it was quite interesting, Barry protesting too much, where he was asked about the tranquilizer gun. Now, whatever the defense say today, whatever clever defense they have today, it was a little bit different at the time, right? Barry Morphy, thanks a lot, Max. Thanks for that, Max in New Zealand. Barry Morphy apparently told investigators that he used his tranquilizer gun to shoot a deer in late April of 2020 to get their horn. Now, this is such a great little piece of the evidence trail, right? You might not think it is a big deal, you might think, oh, so that does make sense. He used it to shoot a deer. But thanks for adding that little bit at the end, Barry. Thanks a lot for providing that little bit of context. You didn't just shoot the deer, you wanted to get their horns. So let's check that. Let's find out, let's follow up and see how realistic that is, how reasonable that is, right? So he gives us the date that he used this tranquilizer gun in late April 2020, right? So predating the incident by 9 days, essentially. Let's say, give or take 9 or 10 days, not more than 2 weeks, right? So it's very close to the time. So again, so what did the tranquilizer gun break after that in that short period of time? Well, why not say that then? Well, after I shot the deer, I tried to shoot something else and it broke. It's not really mentioned there. Anyway, what he said, I'm telling you right now to get horns. They go to sleep, I remove their horns, they go off with no horns on their head, right? So his story was that he was tranquilizing the deer, and then he would remove their horns while they were tranquilized, and then they would recover and run off. I don't know whether, I suppose you could remove the sort of upper part of the horns, but a lot of deer antlers are sort of, you get the bottom of those antlers as well. If you cut them up too high, they're not part of that pedestal. That makes sense. I would love to hear other hunters whether this happens very often. I somehow have my doubts about it. Unless he's trying to make a sort of a light, what do you call it? A light cover from antlers. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't sort of get the idea that Barry was a nice, kind, gentle hunter. That he would, if he's shooting chipmunks the way that he is, why wouldn't he shoot the deer, take the antlers, and also get the meat and kind of enjoy the business of hunting, which he did seem to do? So do you believe that, right? And so we're going to see that there's reason for us not to believe that. We will get to that in a moment. So as I understand it, Barry admits that he used the tranquilizer gun to shoot a deer inside the garage or the breezeway. Now, again, I don't know if I'm understanding this correctly. The way I understand it is that he was standing inside the garage with a tranquilizer gun. He was standing inside the breezeway, I guess, with a tranquilizer gun, one of the two areas. And it was from that position that he used the tranquilizer gun. And I think that is his explanation for why there's certain evidence of tranquilizer paraphernalia in the garage, is that he shot from the garage. To me, it's just a very outlandish story, just very unlikely. But what I think does come up that I think is quite interesting from this is that he puts himself in the garage, and I do think there may be some relationship, there may be some intertextuality, criminal intertextuality, which is to say that someone perhaps watched the events of the Fotis Doulos case and learned from them. We know that Barry was actually listening to a podcast and about like a crime podcast. And so was he not trying to educate himself? And so the fact that the Fotis Doulos case preceded this one, was he not trying to educate himself? And so you have a situation here where it also perhaps something happened in the garage. Fotis Doulos used his garage as a kind of a kill box. Was that the idea here as well? So what was quite interesting in the tweets from Lauren Scharf dealing with the hearing today was it confirmed something that I suspected. It was my theory that Barry was keeping tabs on Suzanne through her phone, perhaps through the iCloud. The only reason I say that is if you take that away, if you take away the keeping tabs, if you take away the advanced knowledge, then you kind of got to ask yourself, okay, so what else could have made someone really angry and feel a sense of urgency and just push up the boiling point? What can make someone, get very agitated and feel a sense of murderous urgency if you're not looking at their phone? Well, the other alternative is that you have some direct interactions. Maybe that is part of the case, but I do think if you incorporate the surveillance of the phone into this, you can understand someone who's a controlling person, someone who's an angry person getting furious, seeing what someone is doing under kind of behind your back kind of thing, right? Now, I can tell you once I broke up with someone or our relationship ended. I actually didn't know it was over. Everyone else did actually. And I, just on a guess, I hacked into this person's email just using the pet name that I had for her. She was using that as it was just a guess. I was just not knowing what was going on in our relationship. And I just, in a weird way, I took what I thought was an unlikely guess. I probably would have spent 30 seconds on this, and I was quite desperate. I was quite a young guy, and I was hopelessly in love and all that kind of thing. And sure enough, I did get in, and I was devastated, and I was so many emotions. I was furious. I was heartbroken. I was very upset. I was sad. I felt lost. I felt terrible. And you sort of experience all of that by yourself. You sort of read through these messages and you get the other side of what somebody thinks about you and is saying about you. And it is devastating. And you either take it on the chin and you somehow deal with it, or you can kind of have a psychotic break, or you can just lose it in some way. And of course, we weren't married and there wasn't a lot invested, but what if you are? What if you share a home? What if you share children? What if you share a lifetime together and you read that stuff about yourself? I'm just saying, to me, intuitively, it makes sense that there was that kind of surveillance, because that would drive someone crazy in a way, right? I'm not saying that alone. I'm saying that in combination with a lot of other things. So you can imagine that if he saw talk in these messages, if he was able to find talk about that she wanted to move out, that her 50 grievances against him, that must have been hard to read if she came across that. This would not only alarm him, but I think it would infuriate him. But I think part of it is fear. A lot of people think crimes happen out of anger. I think a lot of the time crimes happen out of fear. And so the response to that fear is an attempt to take control of the narrative, take control of the finances, just take control, just get a sense of control. Because in a situation where someone's leaving you, you feel like, and especially if it's a life partner, you feel like there's a loss of control. There's going to be a loss of other things. There's going to be a loss of money. There's going to be a loss of in perhaps prestige and reputation. A lot of things are stood to be lost. And you may also not like the idea that someone's going to go out into the world and tell them who you really are. That might be the biggest fear, that this persona you've been protecting all this time, your spouse is now going to be the great leveler, in the sense that they are going to, and I don't think Suzanne would have really done that, but it happened. In the Chris Watts case, what may Shanann Watts have said about Chris Watts or his mistress if they did go through with a divorce? What fallout would have occurred on social media? And perhaps Chris Watts was afraid of that. So I do think that if he was aware that she was moving out, she says, "I'm done," this would have alarmed him, especially from a financial perspective. He may have felt, "I can't afford for you to move out," just like Shanann felt with Chris Watts. "I can't afford to have a divorce. With 3 children, I can't afford this. I don't really have a choice. Whether he loves me or not, whether I love him, we've got to stay together because, it's an untenable financial situation." And I think that can create a desperate and dire lock-in that someone wants to break out of, but someone else might also want to pull the strings, to control that. And now I'm going to say something that a lot of you may not agree with or appreciate, and you may just kind of think that it's actually a ridiculous thing to say. I do think it's possible that the affair didn't bother him as much as Suzanne actually leaving him. Let me say that again. I think it's possible that the affair with Jeff didn't bother him as much as Suzanne actually leaving him. I'm not saying it didn't bother him. I'm saying it's possible that something else bothered him even more. And I'm saying that it could be that her moving out and finding a new home and taking her money with him, that could have been the thing that was really bothering him, that the thing that he wanted to prevent from happening. Because bear in mind, this affair had been going on for quite a long time. And I also say that, assuming that if Barry was having an affair, we don't know if he was, but assuming if he was having an affair, or affairs, plural, would it really have bothered him so much if she was? Now, I'm sure it would bother him if she's having an affair, but it would bother him a little bit less if he's having an affair anyway. Do you get what I'm saying? Often when couples, I wouldn't say often, but I think sometimes when there's infidelity, one of the ways that things come back to normal is the other spouse also cheats, and then it's almost like, okay, we're now back to square one. I'm just saying there is a little bit of a sense of, if you both, I think you get what I'm saying. I don't know if I need to stress it any further. So I'm just saying, I don't know if the affair was such a big deal. I think what may have been a bigger deal was her leaving with her money, and that it was now finally over, kind of thing. And I think that raised the question, was Barry overall, was he actually using Suzanne so he had access to her fortune? Was he sort of tolerating the affair? Well, he's having an affair as well, because he was getting something out of that. He was getting, when I say access to a fortune, it wasn't a huge fortune, but it was certainly quite a lot of money. Was it enough to commit a crime over? So when I saw this tweet from Lauren Scharf, I really, I sort of felt quite validated. She said, between May 5th and 9th, 2020, the FBI said they could not get everything off Barry Morphy's phone because it had been deleted. Again, echoes of the Chris Watts case and I think the Patrick Frazee case. The state asked such an important question. is it possible that Barry could have been tracking Suzanne? And Agent Grusing said yes. And, I certainly would want to explore that in more detail. Maybe it's because it's the preliminary hearing, but how could he have kept track? Now, I would say using the iCloud. I don't know if there's an app that could do that. I don't know whether he would have known her password. Hard to say. He may have also tried to look at her phone whenever he could, but somehow I think the iCloud is possible, if not probable. And so, if you are someone in a marriage, especially if you're in a troubled marriage, you might want to think about separating your iCloud just for your own safety and security. Then, according to, again, Lauren Scharf, a tweet dealing with May 8th, Barry brought up moving to Arizona. Now, I think Barry did this to test Suzanne. Now, bear in mind, this is 2 days after the "it's done" text. So I think what happened there was Barry kind of wanted to know Suzanne's intent, but without asking her directly. So he didn't say, "Are you still done?" He didn't say... Instead, I think he brought up moving to Arizona to test Suzanne, to kind of get a sense from her of what her intentions were. In other words, something like, do you feel like moving? Or perhaps it was I'm not sure if Arizona came up between Suzanne and Jeff. So it may also have been a subtle, a subtle poke that, guess what, I actually know what you're doing, right? I can't quite remember. I seem to remember that Arizona came up with Jeff, but if it did, maybe that is what Barry was doing. And he says this is the first time this was ever mentioned, and Suzanne actually thought it was strange. Suzanne picked up on this and thought, wow, this is odd. And I wonder whether Suzanne didn't think, I think Barry knows, or I think Barry knows something, or I think Barry is watching me, or something like that. And so she's alerted. And bear in mind, Suzanne sent that very important, critical, actually, text to her sister on May 9th, and quite a long text. I think it was the last text that she sent. And then her sister deleted it. I've got to say, it's something like that is heartbreaking from the perspective of the trying to help the victim find justice. It's heartbreaking. It's terrible. Someone sends their last text reaching out for help, and they do actually need help. They do actually need intervention, and then they lose their life. Guess what? The text gone. I'm not saying that the police won't be able to recover it, but does it help when someone close to you deletes a text like that? Sort of moaning about that. Someone may have their reasons. I'm just, from a true crime perspective, it's frustrating. It's kind of my point. So, as I say, this Arizona thing was brought up. Barry brought up moving to Arizona on May 8th. That's the day before this happened. Bear in mind, in the Chris Watts case, also this idea of moving to Brighton, and moving is one of the most stressful things you can do. It tends to be a lifestyle change. It's got financial implications. It's traumatic. Your sense of investment and connection to things change, right? And so all of this is brought up on the day before, on May 8th. Barry talks about moving to Arizona. This is the first time it's ever mentioned. Suzanne thinks it's strange. Suzanne's now getting probably quite concerned. She may now send additional messages expressing her concern, and then does Barry intercept it? Or is she now aware that Barry is spying on her, and does she confront him on that, and that actually triggers him even more? it's kind of a game of spy versus spy. She's been spying on him, and now is this surveillance of her increasing as well? And in a way, it seems like they were in like a war of the roses. I've mentioned this before, that they're both aware that things are sort of over and deteriorating, but they're sort of playing the long game. We're going to get out of this eventually. And ultimately, then what happens? So apparently, according to Grusing, Suzanne was looking at homes for sale in Salida, Colorado, according to the text messages. So we know that Suzanne was thinking of, she had to be thinking of leaving Barry, but in the direct way of, I'm not just thinking of leaving you, I've got to find another place to stay. And I'm going to stay in Salida, probably, because my daughters are here. I'm going to stay in Salida for now, right? I think Barry bringing up Arizona may also been, does Jeff know? Is Jeff part of this moving plan? Are you going to be moving to Jeff, or are you just going to be moving away from me? Is Jeff coming here? All that kind of thing. But again, you've just got the same thing going on in the Chris Watts case, searching for a new home, deleted texts surrounding the incident. It's kind of like, if there's an equation for this, it's cheating plus money equals murder. Same equation in the Chris Watts case. So now we come back to the tranquilizer dart, but now dealing with the sort of laundry narrative. And when we say laundry narrative, we're also talking about things like bedding and pillowcases and sort of used clothing or used material, that needs to be washed, kind of thing. That's part of the laundry narrative. It could also include something like a carpet that has a stain on it that has been cleaned. It's something that is cleaned up with detergents and that kind of thing. So here's a classic quote from Barry. He says, "I don't get how that got there. It has nothing to do with me." Really? A tranquilizer dart cap in the laundry, in the dryer, has got nothing to do with him. Well, who else would use that? He doesn't have another son. There's not a son in the family. Is like a brother or some other figure's not there. I don't think his wife was sort of the hunting type. I don't know whether his daughters were. So if it doesn't have anything to do with him, who does it have something to do with? So I'm going to read this tweet from Lauren Scharf. She says, quote, "So the tranquilizer dart cap was actually a tranquilizer needle sheath found in the dryer, which is a disposable needle recapping device. Barry told the investigators, 'I don't know how that got there. It had nothing to do with me,' end quote." So again, this is an argument over semantics. The defense was saying, you know what, how can you call it a tranquilizer dart cap? It's totally wrong. You know what, we're very upset that the way that this is being spoken about is just wrong. Okay, so if it's not a tranquilizer dart cap, what is it? It's a tranquilizer needle sheath. Oh, okay. So you can kind of make a big song and dance about that it's not that. And it might seem, wow, the prosecution were wrong. It's not a tranquilizer dart cap. And you can kind of reinforce that over and over again. It's not a tranquilizer dart cap. It's not a tranquilizer dart cap. Well, what is it? Well, it is a tranquilizer dart cap, but it's actually called a tranquilizer needle sheath. So it is a tranquilizer dart cap, but the correct term is that. But what ends up happening is you can make the case, you can say the words in court, it's not a tranquilizer dart cap. Technically it's true, but it's not. It's basically not true because it's the same thing. But you can kind of make that argument, and someone who's not really paying attention might be sort of sitting there, perhaps half asleep, going, "Oh, so it's not a tranquilizer dart cap. I heard it's not a tranquilizer dart cap." And someone can repeat that, and in that little box, it's true, it's not a tranquilizer dart cap, but actually it is. and I can tell you now, people will typically refer to it as a dart cap, not needle sheath, because that almost suggests that it is a vaccine or some kind of injection thing, and it sort of creates a impression in your mind that that's not quite the same. Anyway, Barry's response to this when they told him about it, like, Barry, here is a dart cap. Can you explain this to us? And he said, I don't know how it got there. It's got nothing to do with me. But Barry, it's in your home. You're a hunter. So then besides that, there's also the bed that was stripped. Sheets were found downstairs, question mark. What's this about? Is this intertextuality with the Chris Watts case? Is it intended to misdirect attention towards the bed? Is the idea that people are going to search for Suzanne and evidence for her in the bed, and obviously, well, did something happen there? Is the idea that people will think something happened when Suzanne was sleeping, as they did in the Chris Watts case, which I don't think is the case. I don't think Shanann was sleeping. A lot of people do. I don't think Suzanne was sleeping. I don't know if people think that Suzanne was sleeping, but doing this with the bed kind of says, wow, there are things lying around by the bed. Something must have happened. There must have been an altercation in the bed. And so you direct attention there only to find nothing. Something happened. We can't really explain it. Oh, so you're going to look. So Lauren Scharf talks about Exhibit 66, a photo of Mallory Morphy's bedroom. So that's one of the daughter's bedrooms. Again, we don't get to see this, unfortunately. We don't even get really a description of this. We might get that a little bit later. It's her bed that was stripped and comforter found on the ground, and the sheets found downstairs. So, it's her bedding from her bedroom that are put somewhere else. Then none of Barry's DNA was found on Suzanne's bike helmet. Was somebody wearing gloves? We know in the Chris Watts case, it appeared as though blue nitrile gloves were worn. Someone mentioned earlier, who leaves a safe open ever? Why is a safe left open? Even within the context of a crime scene, inside the home of the people involved, why is a safe open? And so the fact that the safe is open, I think, is to allow someone else the possibility to access it and to steal what is inside. To say, you know what, the safe was open, and because it was open, someone didn't need to know the access or have the key, so anyone else could have taken that money. So in certain cases like the John Benet Ramsey case, the Madeleine McCann case, the Nora Corrin case, you've got to leave some kind of door open so that a third party can be blamed, right? So in the John Benet Ramsey case, you say, oh, there's a broken window, that's how the third party got in. Oh, okay, so that explains it. In the Madeleine McCann case, there was a window open, never mind the shutters, but there's a window open. Oh, that explains how the third party got in. Well, why wouldn't they have come in through the open door? In the Nora Corrin case, there's an open window, but there's also a door that couldn't lock. And the open window is sort of raised above the ground. Anyway, the thing is, that is how this third party got in. So how did I think it's $70,000, which is almost an exact match for the amount of money that I think Patrick Frazee loaned and was due at the time that Kelsey Bereth died. I think that was $72,000. So if you're going to say how much money is enough that is going to push someone to commit a certain kind of crime, you might say $70,000. For some people, it might be more. Some people might be less. But I do think it's interesting that the safe is left open. Who opened it? Who was the last to look in there? I think part of that story is also that, I think, according to Barry, Suzanne took the money. Suzanne took the money, ran off, and I don't know, did she forget to spend the money? Did she take the money on a mountain bike? Does she kind of go take $70,000 and then go on a mountain bike ride? So when you see some of these things in isolation, you can kind of come up with quite good defenses. You can raise doubts and so on. But when you see them in an integrated way together, then it's often kind of absurd when you start linking everything up. And so the job of the defense are to break things into little pieces, make it very complicated, make it difficult for the puzzle to hold together. In other words, fragment things and break connections and make it seem very complicated, and it's sort of hard to sort of see a integrated picture. What the prosecution must do is tell an integrated story that connects everything up, a story that's cohesive and there's continuity, and the timelines go somewhere, right? Okay, so the safe was open in the garage. So once again, there's a possible reason why the garage would be not necessarily the crime scene, but part of the crime scene, why some of what happened could have happened in the garage. So there's some really amazing additional evidence. Suzanne's spy pen was found in the master bedroom closet. That was all female clothes. It was found in a box of bras, and a picture of the pen was shown to Agent Graham. It would have been interesting to see that. But what I think that indicates is, did Barry know about it? And I really don't know. I don't know whether the fact that it was found where it was found indicates that Suzanne hid it there, which it really well could be, because she wouldn't expect Barry to look in there, or that Barry found the spy pen somewhere and then put it there, as if, you know, he didn't know about it. I tend to think it's the former of those theories. I don't know what you guys think, that Barry wasn't aware of the spy pen, and that Suzanne was keeping it in her clothing because of that, right? Agent Graham, there's another tweet from Lauren, said that there was a box of syringes inside the safe in the garage, as well as several darts. I must say, when I see something like that, I kind of wonder, how did whoever was responsible for what happened to Suzanne think that they were going to get away with it? Certain things were done, I think, cleverly and completely, but then other things are so messy, an evidence trail that's so messy. You know, the box of syringes inside the safe is pretty significant evidence, and I think is related to the events of the case. So for me, it's quite strange that someone wouldn't think about that. Also several darts, so boxes of syringes and several darts. Photo of the garage was with the safe open was shown. Heavenly clouds, thanks a lot. Okay, so let's just go on. So when the bike helmet was found, DNA evidence from the helmet was tested, and Barry's DNA was excluded. So what I wonder was Barry wearing gloves, or did the bike helmet get there by itself? Tire castings were done on both vehicles. This is quite interesting, and were not a match to where the helmet was found. So that's quite a good point, is they're saying that I think this is from the defense, they analyzed the vehicles, and the vehicle tracks found near the helmet didn't match Barry's vehicle. That's a fairly good defense, I think. Of course, you could have had other vehicles stopped there, police vehicles or whatever. You could also have the tracks that were left behind removed. It's also possible that the bicycle was put there by hand, not taken with a vehicle. Although that I'm not sure is likely. It's also possible that someone rode the bicycle there at night. In other words, got to that point by riding the bicycle and then disposed of it, then walked back. That's also possible. And this is the part that I think is quite interesting, dealing with the laundry narrative, if you want to call it that. Barry was wearing khaki shorts on May 9th. The same shorts were found in the dryer, right? Let me say that again. Barry was wearing khaki shorts on May 9th. May 9th is pretty important. We know what Barry was wearing on that day, and those shorts were found in the dryer. So let me ask you, doesn't that mean, if they were found in the dryer, doesn't that mean those shorts were washed? And if those shorts were washed and that they were worn that day, is it possible that the person who wore those shorts, if he used a tranquilizer gun, could have removed the cap and put it into his pocket? And then how, in other words, the answer to how did the cap get there was that the person who used the tranquilizer gun removed this cap, put it in his pocket, forgot about it, and then later washed those trousers, and that is how the cap got there. Is that a crazy kind of sci-fi scenario, or possible? Probable? What do you guys think? So, as I say, I think this is once again confirmation of the importance of laundry and checking the laundry within the fabric of a crime scene. So if you from law enforcement, or you're training to go into law enforcement, do yourself a favor, especially if it's quite a serious crime, especially if there's apparently no evidence. Where there's a crime scene with no evidence, what is likely is that it's either been covered up or washed up or cleaned up. But where would you cover, wash and clean things? Well, in the laundry. You would also want to check things like drains, shower, the shower grill, where things would go down, the toilets, the fireplace, things like that. I actually recently heard one of Chris McDonough's FBI experts. Someone actually asked them, do you think laundry is kind of an important aspect? And he kind of poo-pooed that aspect. So, sorry, I disagree with the FBI. I think it is a critical aspect in a cover-up scenario. I think it's absolutely critical. And it's certainly part of the most vital evidence in this case, right? Do you agree with that? Do you agree that this dart cap is potentially the most vital piece of evidence in this case? It's not where it should be. It's out of place. Okay, so another question that comes up is, could the hot tub and chemicals be relevant? Now, do you think chemicals are relevant? We know they are part of the narrative at the hotel, at the Holiday Inn. I'm back. I was about to log off. Wow, okay. Funny how things go. Starting to wonder, how did that happen? What's going on? So let me just wrap up. I don't want to be on here for too much longer. I've got another live starting in an hour with Stephanie. Stephanie, I hope you are available and okay. So the question I kind of posed earlier was, could the hot tub and chemicals be relevant? And so that comes up in the preliminary hearing narrative after about an hour, where they say, according to Lauren Scharf, quote, "No receipt was found for the hot tub chemicals from Salidus Stove and Spa. Inside the dryer, investigators also found khaki-colored shorts that Barry was wearing on May 9th, according to surveillance photos." So what I think is quite interesting with that is Again, I don't know who brought this up. I assume it's from the defense saying, well, but there's no receipt for the hot tub chemicals. In the same way that they're kind of saying, well, there's no what do you call it? None of the chemicals for the tranquilizer, there's no receipt for that. So it doesn't really, we can't prove that there were any. It's kind of the same nitpicky argument. Again, I'm assuming that this is brought up by the defense saying, there's no receipt for that. But it does raise again this question of hot tub chemicals. Was the hot tub used for something? And I've got to acknowledge, I don't know. For me, it's quite hard to say. I know that I think it was said that I think, unless I misread it, that the hot tub was also broken. You may have a scenario possibly that the broken tranquilizer gun, so don't think about that, and the broken hot tub, so don't think about that. It might be a similar scenario. If the hot tub was broken for a significant period of time, and let's face it, hot tubs do break, then that's different. So it could be that it was broken anyway. But if that's something new, then it could be relevant. Again, how could it be relevant? It's a little bit difficult to say. I've never really thought that there was significant processing at the Holiday Inn. So not nothing, just not significant processing. Just because when you go to a hotel, people see you, you've got to take things in. So I didn't really get the sense that a lot happened there. Not that nothing happened there, but not as much as something happened at the Morphy home. And if that's the case, possibly the hot tub had some instrumental role. It certainly is possible. I think the other thing you've got to ask is if certain chemicals used, corrosive chemicals, wouldn't that damage the hot tub? And then next question, was the hot tub damaged? Did it suffer chemical damage? I'm not sure if it would have. I don't know. According to Salidus Stove and Spa, Agent Graham said that the owners told him that Barry had been at the store inquiring to get his hot tub fixed on May 9th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Now that is really significant. He wants his hot tub fixed on May 9th. This is a critical time, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. I don't know if they've got the time right there, but it seems pretty crazy. And what that also raises is the possibility, did the hot tub break just before that? And if so, is that where one must move the timeline? The investigator said the owner told them that Morphy didn't buy anything. So Barry went to the Salidus Stove and Spa to talk about this hot tub, and that was it, to say it was broken on that day of all days. Is it suspicious? It does seem suspicious. And now we have echoes of the Oscar Pistorius case, possible forced entry into the bedroom. Had Suzanne run inside the home? It does seem so. Had she run from the garage trying to reach her keys, as I think Reva Steenkamp did? She was trying to go inside the home to get something that would allow her to go outside the home. Or was she running in the opposite direction, from the bedroom to the garage, or from any other room to the garage, or from the garage to any other room, or from the garage to wherever they kept the keys, or from wherever the keys were to the garage? Suzanne's journal is apparently missing as well. So I'm just going to read a couple of Lauren's tweets here. One reads, quote, according to the Sheffield County Sheriff's Undersheriff, the door frame of the master bedroom looked like there'd been forced entry from the outside. It's quite important to note, from the outside of the room. So you get that Suzanne may have been hiding inside the bedroom, that perhaps she'd been shot or whatever with this tranquilizer. She's still got a window of time in which she can move and be ambulant. And what she does is she runs to the bedroom, perhaps tries to lock herself in. They also find a 22 caliber unspent shell on Suzanne's side of the bed. That raises the issue of was another weapon used? Also, Mallory's bedroom that is so messed up is the idea that you're going to pay attention to that and not what is going on in the main bedroom. I wonder where they found this 22 caliber shell. Bear in mind it's an unspent shell. I wonder where they found that. Was it in plain sight? Because you could say, well, Barry just dropped it. He was going hunting or something. It just happened to be there. Is it something he didn't see because it was dark? It just adds more intrigue to this case, doesn't it? But, I think a lot of us wondered, is there any evidence sort of against Barry? Is there any evidence at all? And it sort of feels like there's so much evidence. It's not necessarily direct evidence, not necessarily a smoking gun, but it certainly is a piece, and perhaps pieces of a puzzle that sort of come together. So I'm almost done. See, the time is ticking on. And then this I found fascinating. Like Chris Watts, Barry's demeanor once back inside the home is all wrong, according to Undersheriff Andy Rorich. Because Barry, I think, was on the defensive, he's not asking questions. So like Chris Watts during the sermon on the porch, he's not appealing, he's not reaching out, he's on the defensive. So all he's trying to do is react, trying to appear the way that he thinks he should. But that is not how an innocent person would act under those circumstances. An innocent person is not going to be that defensive. They're going to be appealing, asking, questioning, hoping, talking, communicating. Of course, you've got to take their personalities into consideration as well. An introvert may not do that so much. But was Barry an introvert? Barry seemed to be on the defensive. He wasn't asking questions. He didn't try to call Suzanne's phone, which I think is a big red flag. Did Chris Watts try to call Shanann's phone? Well, he did, but it took him a while. You would imagine that would be the first thing he would have done when he arrived home. I mean, walked into the home, called out to her within about a minute of not finding her. Well, shouldn't you phone her? Okay, Timmy, come. Timmy wants my attention, but away from this chair. Come. He's quite clever. He jumps on my leg and then he jumps back to draw me out. Anyway. Also, he didn't seem interested in looking at the bed. I'm not sure which bed that is, or trying to figure anything out. Probably he wanted the cops to pay attention to outside the home, hence the bicycle. And would make sense if the cops just all went like bees to the honeypot to the bicycle. Look at the bicycle. There's something going on here. Look at the bicycle. Well, that misdirects away from the house, doesn't it? Amazingly, Barry spent just 3 minutes inside the home from 21:37 until 21:40, or 23 minutes to 10 until 20 to 10. I think a lot of us would really love to see that body cam footage, just to see what Don was like and kind of what was going on. Also interesting, I'm just reading from Lauren Scharf's tweets here. She said, investigators were told to find 3 books that Suzanne always had together in the home. Now, the impression I get is that these 3 books were sort of on a pile together. And this was one of Suzanne's habits. It would be a Bible, an Al-Anon book, I think Alcoholics Anonymous, and a journal. So those 3 books would be sort of her, a kind of go-to books for her, often using them. And they weren't together. The journal was missing. So one also wonders who told the investigators this. Well, it could have been her father, I think. It could also have been her sister. Who else could have said that? Possibly the neighbor. It's difficult to say. Maybe even Jeff, but her father probably could have told them that. The undersheriff is describing what else was found in the fireplace. So they also found things in the fireplace. There was burnt wood and papers. That's quite significant. I've often thought in the John Benet Ramsey case, were certain things burnt, such as duct tape, such as pieces of nylon, and perhaps other things. So they found burnt wood, burnt papers. Bear in mind, there were also papers found at the Holiday Inn, certainly by the other worker. And they also found a bundle of firewood next to the fireplace untouched, almost as though, did he want to make a really big fire? He really wanted to burn a lot of things. So this extra bundle of firewood, was this intended to not just warm the home? And who would want to warm the home in May? I'm not saying you wouldn't, but who would want to warm the home that much in May compared to in winter? Bear in mind it's summer. Timmy, do you want to come, or are you still going to try and lead me away? Let's hold you up. Okay, I'm going to try and not be more than another 5 or 10 minutes. So they also found black bicycle shorts in the home. I'm not quite sure what the significance is of that. Did Suzanne only have a single pair of bicycle shorts? If so, why are they at the home? They also found riding gloves wadded up on the floor. Again, does she have 2 pairs of riding gloves? I've got probably about 3 pairs, but I've only got 1 pair where the fingers are cut off, right? And so this is what the sheriff thought was strange. He said that Barry wasn't trying to call Suzanne's phone, and the last place he apparently saw her alive, he wasn't asking any questions or looking at the bed. Once again, demeanor is really important in a situation like that. It's not going to crack the case, but it's going to start to nudge you in a certain direction. And if someone's demeanor isn't right, as I said, it may end up being a wild goose chase, but it may not be. That may be the first step you take, the starting point in your investigation is the person's demeanor, and often it is. Now onto the movements of Barry's truck. It turns around at the Garfield mine, which I think is quite interesting. I don't know whether they know for a fact that it stopped there or how much time it spends there, or whether the vehicle's going there to misdirect, that maybe knew they'd be following his movements, and so guys go and look down the mine. Good luck. I don't know if that's the case. If they can tell that the car turned around, I'm sure they could tell whether it stopped. I don't get the sense that it stopped, and I don't get the sense that doors opened or closed. So I wonder whether that's not an attempt to misdirect, or perhaps someone changed their mind. They headed to the mine, decided not a good idea. At 2:32 p.m., and I take it this is on May 9th, I could be wrong, At 2:32 p.m., Barry's truck was seen on surveillance passing the Shell gas station. I presume that's the Shell gas station's CCTV. That is east of the Salida Spa and Stove. The truck wasn't seen again until 5:15 in the morning, heading east. I need to apply my mind a bit more to know the significance of that. Bear in mind that he went to the Salida Spa and Stove, I think an hour and a half after that. And so the question is, did something happen between 2:30 in the afternoon on the Saturday? Bear in mind, the children aren't there. The children are in Idaho, right? At a church camp. So he's kind of got the run of the house on Saturday afternoon. He's also potentially running out of time. So it's the afternoon, and did something happen between 2:30 and 4 o'clock when he returns to the Salida Spa and Stove? Victoria, I haven't seen you for a while. Popping by to say hi, keep missing the lives, but not this one. Excellent post every day. Love your work. Thanks a lot, Victoria. Good to see you again. I certainly haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you. The undersheriff saying that the vehicle turned around at the Garfield mine after leaving the home Sunday morning. And that's about it. That's about the end of my review. I think the most important point to make is this one. It's the last point that was made before the lunch break. And it deals with exhibits 85 to 87. Photos of Barry Morphy's hands and arms with injuries, right? Bear in mind, Chris Watts had no injuries, and he didn't use a tranquilizer dart, but he may have used something, I think, on the girls kind of thing. Anyway, according to Undersheriff Rorick, his upper left arm, according to this undersheriff, he thought that on the upper left arm, so I guess here, it looked like fingernail injuries, 3 abrasions or cuts scabbing over. Outside of his hands were injuries in various stages of healing. So we're also not quite sure when this was. I assume it was very early on for it to be relevant. It's also difficult to know what to make of this without seeing it, but it is interesting. A fingernail injury is quite idiosyncratic, and that is why I've used the title of this video as I have, because a fingernail injury is very, it starts to take things in a very specific direction. Now, you may have thought that the tranquilizer dart prevented a physical altercation, but it's possible that there was one. Bear in mind, if she was darted, she still would have had time to shout out, to cry out. There would have been a short period, a short window where it should have been actually activated and not under his control, potentially, if that had happened. And so in a scenario like that, that can actually prompt a, what do you call it? It can actually prompt a serious escalation, which you're going to then need to sort out very, very quickly. You know, it's totally different, I think, shooting an animal like a deer that isn't going to really say anything and is going to sort of wonder what happened, and a person's smart enough to know, you know, especially my husband doing this to me, this is an emergency. This is critical. This is going to be a fight for my survival. If it happens to an animal, it tends to be, I'm not sure, well, what was that? I'm not quite sure, and might stand around. Totally different scenario with a person. I do want to compare this to Scott Peterson. He also had injuries on his hands, on his fingers. They actually found blood, small smears of blood on the inside of his truck, fresh blood stains. Scott Peterson, I believe, was cutting chicken wire and making anchors, and I believe working quite quickly, and that may be why he cut his fingers. Things like chicken wire are something that can likely cause those sort of injuries. And so is that the case there? Disposal, you've got to remember, is a messy business, not just a messy business, it's physically hard work, especially to do in a hurry. And it's also possible that I think Barry could have wrestled with Suzanne if she was darted, and that could then have happened. I think JonBenet Ramsey also may have her own fingernail impressions under her neck. I'm just saying it's possible. She didn't die instantly. She had, I think, time, a couple of seconds to try and remove this cord that was around her neck. And she was trying so hard that it created these small half-moon circles, semicircles, that are typical of fingernail impressions in skin. I think one would also want to look at Suzanne's fingernails prior to this happening, just to see, were they very short? Obviously, if you bite your fingernails like I do, not a great habit, but if you bite them, your chance of making those are less. I'm not saying you wouldn't make them, but the longer your fingernails are, the better the chance of that happening. I also think in the Chris Watts case, that mark that he had at his neck was a score, an injury inflicted by Shanann's fingernails, to be honest. So as I say, I don't think the dart would necessarily prevent her from calling out or screaming or putting up a temporary struggle, a critical kind of life and death struggle in the immediate aftermath. So I do think, to summarize, I do think the fingernail injuries, quote unquote, because we don't know for sure, but I do think the fingernail injuries are relevant. I do think they may suggest a tussle on May 9th. What do you guys think? Okay, guys, I'm not going to take it much further. This has been a little bit longer than I thought it would be. Let me just deal with some of your points. Mazoka says Suzanne had money. Anna says poor baby. Yeah, Pauline says she agrees. Vicky Cunningham, manicured nails don't scratch as deep. They're thickened by product. Okay. Renee Baker Carter says Jeff turned her onto cycling. Okay, so I hope you guys found this recap interesting. I mean, the idea is to take what we're getting from the courtroom and to interpret it, to try and put things together, to try and analyze the information. That's the whole point. I have put in the description Lauren Scharf's Twitter, so if you want to follow the afternoon session, you guys are welcome to do it. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the afternoon session today. I might do another episode dealing with further details, but I'm going to deal with the Summer Wells case in around about half an hour, might be a little bit longer, half an hour, 45 minutes. So I'll probably be doing that using StreamYard. Hope my internet connection works. And Stephanie will be on there as well, just dealing with the notes that we took when Don spoke on Voices Behind the Wall yesterday. Renee Baker Carter says Barry's a huntsman. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, so I just want to thank those who did contribute super chats. I know there's one that was quite a big super chat. I appreciate that. I want to thank my mods for just at very, very short notice coming in. I want to thank you guys for your comments. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to some of them. I really needed to go through through my notes and some of the things, and so I can't do everything at the same time. But I do try and keep track of you guys as far as I can. Bearded Dragon Mom, thanks a lot. So yeah, for those interested in the Summer Wells case, don't go too far. I'll probably be back in about half an hour, 45 minutes. Just need to eat something. Sharon Tux put up a link to Patreon. I do have analysis that you see on YouTube. It first appears there, and also, something that appears in the news, breaking news. I also do a little bit of interpretation of that there. So if you're interested in true crime, you might want to head on to patreon.com/TCRS. A lot of content's available on the $1 tier, so check it out. Carrie Ross says, everyone check the like button. Well, I see there's still 500 of you in chat. I'd love to continue talking about this, but I've kind of got to move on to the next case. But good to have you here, and I will continue covering the Morphy case. So watch this space. Once again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.